Warning: these social media platforms may be hazardous to your health. Censorship kills. Pain coming. This has been a PSA by Breaking Spectre. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How we doing? Breaking Spectre here for another edition of No BS. It's been a while since I've done that here on the old 5x5 network. Tonight on the broadcast, we're going to do a little bit of a dig into history here. We are on a bit of an interesting eve, as it were, taking a look back through history on some of the things that have occurred on this next date, tomorrow, the 19th. We'll take a little jog down memory lane to refresh your memory of some of the things that have happened over the last couple, 2-3 years, plus go back as far as the Wacos, and of course back to 1775. We are certainly upon some interesting times, and of course just looking at some of the things that have happened over the last week or so with all the various shootings. Just this week we had Indianapolis, we had here today down in Austin, and I think we had a couple others here also, and it seems like everything is just leading somewhere. Does that necessarily mean we're going to see something play out tomorrow? I can't say for certain, but I will definitely say that we should probably keep our heads on a swivel for sure. That being said, let's go into some of the prepared material that I got. This one I dug up from back in 2012. It says the dark days of April 19th through May 1st. And it says, hello, John and all doves. The dark days of April 19th to May 1st. It says, even though spring is a wonderful time of year, there always seems to be a darkness about it that is hard to express. As the evil in this world increases, it seems we become more sensitive to its presence, especially born-again Christians who do not partake of pagan rituals. The past few days I've begun to feel this darkness and wanted to remind all doves of what an evil time of year this is for the occult. The following is excerpts from 2 different websites about the evils practiced during this dark time. You can read the full stories at, and of course there's the 2 links in that. I'm not going to get into all of that, but I will stay here on this website and kind of go into some of the numbers and dates and things of that nature. It says the full occult holiday spans from April 19th through May 1st. April 20th is the 110th day of the year, 111th in leap years in the Gregorian calendar. There are 255 days remaining until the end of the year. Double and triple numbers create a power date. 420 equals 6 and reduces into the occult prime power number of 33. 13-day span starting on the 19th through 1-5, ending on 5-1 equals 6, reduces as 33. This year, of course, this must have been penned back 2011, 2012 time frame. 421, 2011 equals 11. 423, 2011 equals 13. 430, 2011 equals 11. Earth Day, 422 equals 44. Reduces the power number of 22. The occult thrives on human worship through worshiping the earth and its elements such as stone, wood, or metal. Some of the very important historic dates that were staged according to this blood sacrifice day are April 19, 1775, which was the Battle of Lexington and Concord, which made the Masonic-led Revolutionary War inevitable. April 19, 1904 was the Great Fire of Toronto. April 18th, 1906, the San Francisco earthquake fire. April 19th, 1936, in the biggest show of military strength since World War I, Germany pays homage to Hitler with a show of 300 tanks. April 19th, 1943, after trapping the last Jewish resistance fighters in a storm drain in Warsaw and holding them for several days, Nazi stormtroopers began to pour fire into each of the storm drains using flamethrowers. They continued pouring the fire into the drain until all fighters were dead. Blood sacrifice brought about by a fiery conflagration. April 20th, 1983, 2 cars packed with high explosives blew up in Baghdad today, killing and injuring a large number of people. 1984, April 20th, the Good Friday Massacre, an extremely violent ice hockey playoff game, is played in Montreal, Canada. April 20th, 1985 through the 20th April 1985, ATF raid on the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord compound in northern Arkansas. April 19th, 1993, 50 years later after the 1943 Warsaw, to the day, government troops, tanks, and other military equipment stormed the compound of David Koresh and his followers at Waco, Texas. Certainly, this operation fulfilled the basic requirements for a human sacrifice: trauma, fire, and young sacrificial victims. April 20th, 1995 was the Oklahoma City bombing. Once again, fire and death on this day. April 20th, 1998, German terrorist group Red Army faction announces their dissolution after 28 years. Up to 1999, the Columbine High School massacre on April 20th. April 19th, 2005, Joseph Alois Ratzinger elected as Pope Benedict XVI. April 20th, 2007, Johnson Space Center shooting and incident of hostages in Building 44. April 20th, 2008, Benedict XVI has visited Ground Zero in New York, the scene of the 11th of September 2001 attacks on the Twin Towers. April 19th, 2010, in Canada, over 400 of straw bales caught on fire and blazed out of control. All right. April 19th, 2010, Iceland's volcanic ash grounds all airlines in Northern Europe while NATO conducts the largest military exercise of the year. April 20th, 2010, the Gulf oil fire. April 20th, the birthday of Adolf Hitler. Also, April 19th through the 25th is the sacrifice preparation, kidnapping, holding, and ceremonial preparation of person for human sacrifice. April 25th is the Demure ritual, grand climax, sex rituals, and sacrifice of a woman or a young girl. April 30th is the Walpurgis Night, Beltane, one of the most important nights on the satanic calendar. Blood rituals and human sacrifice take place. And to better understand what is going on, let us take a closer look at April 19th and what this date signifies to many different groups. So April 19th through May 1st is a very important time period to Satanist, Lucifer followers, and the Illuminati. Blood sacrifice to the beast Moloch begins a most critical 13-day period. Fire sacrifice is required on April 19th, especially children and women, or just plain innocent victims that many just consider collateral damage. April 19th is the first day of the 13-day satanic ritual day relating to the fire, or relating to fire, the fire god Baal, or Moloch, Nimrod, the sun god, also known as a Roman god, Saturn, which is Satan, the devil. And this day is a major human sacrifice day, demanding a fire sacrifice, with an emphasis on children. This day is one of the most important human sacrifice days of the year to Satanists and others, and as such has had some very important historic events occur on this day throughout history. The importance of April 30th and May 1st, well, the Beltane Festival, also called the Walpurgis Night. This is the highest day on the Druidic witches' calendar, while May 1st is the Illuminati's second most sacred holiday. Human sacrifice is required emotionally or physically, and since the celebration officially began the night before Beltane, the tradition has developed among occultists to celebrate Beltane as a 2-day ceremony. This tradition was strong enough that Adolf Hitler decided to kill himself on April 30th at 3:30 p.m., thus creating a 333 and placing his suicide sacrifice within the Beltane time frame. And I suppose that would allude to the fact that if he did indeed die, which perhaps many of us would have a lot of reason to believe that that was not the case, staged or not, But great bonfires are lit on the eve of Beltane, April 30th, in order to welcome the Earth Goddess. Participants hope to gain favor with this goddess, so she will bless their families with procreative fertility. Interesting enough, the Royal House of Windsor lights a Beltane balefire every year. The Maypole originated from the celebration of Beltane, since fertility is being asked of the Earth Goddess. The Maypole is a phallic pyramid-shaped symbol, and the circular dance around the pole forms a circle that is symbolic of the female sex organ. 4 6-foot alternating red and white ribbons were connected to the pole. The men would dance counterclockwise, while the ladies danced clockwise. The union of the intertwining red and white ribbons symbolized the act of copulation. Remembers this as a fertility celebration day. And to comprehend occult Illuminati ties, many countries have always celebrated May Day. The Satanic Illuminati considers war to be a most propitious way to sacrifice, for it kills both children and adults. So I guess the only good news about all this is that the darker it gets out there, the closer we are to going home. Come, Lord Jesus. May the Lord's love and light surround you all until then. And again, this was penned back in 2012, highlighting these particular dates. So that being said, flash over to another site, This Day in History Historical Events on April 19th. I'm not going to read every single one of these, certainly, but see if there's any others aside from the ones that we read in the past. This dates all the way back to the 600s. The Comet 1P607, the Halley, approaches within 0.0898 AUs of Earth. Let's see. In 1524, Pope Clemens VII fires Neth Inquisitor General French von de Halle. Let's see, 1552, Mortis of Saxon captures Carroll. 1619, Theatrum Modicum opens in Amsterdam. 1770, Amsterdam. Let's see, what else we got here. 1775, Minutemen Captain John Parker orders not to fire unless fired upon. They're in 1775. We're going to touch upon that here in just a little bit. The shot heard round the world. Battle on Lexington Green is painted by William Barnes Wolin there. The New England militiamen begin the siege of Boston, hemming in the British Army garrison. Event of interest, Paul Revere, William Dawes, and Samuel Prescott are captured by British troops riding from Lexington to Concord. Prescott escapes to warn Concord. Let's see, in 1782, John Adams secures Dutch Republic's recognition of the United States as an independent government, and the house he purchased in The Hague, Netherlands, became that first American embassy. Let's see, 1810, Venezuela. 1825, 33 patriotic exiles return to Uruguay. Yeah, gotta have that 33 in there. 1836, Nikolai Gogol's Revisor premieres in St. Petersburg. Let's see, any other standoutish ones? Treaty of London, California Historical Society. Baltimore riots, 4 soldiers, 9 civilians killed. Well, there's your 13 when summed up there. And of course, 13 is a number of rebellion at the same time. Let's see, barracks on Alcatraz Island destroyed in fire in 1874. What else we got here? Music premiere, 1897, first Boston Marathon, BAA road race. 1900, highest scoring opening game, Phils beat Braves 1917 and 10. All right, a little sports stuff thrown in there. There's 1906, the San Francisco earthquake ends, killing 452. 1909 is the 13th Boston Marathon. Let's see, what else? There's Halley's Comet in 1910, first time seen by the naked eye. More Boston Marathons. Big boys are here, Italian troops, Alderman Kelly, French Assembly. Let's see, 24th Boston Marathon. New Egyptian law allows suffrage for men except soldiers. 30th Boston Marathon, 1926. What else we got? Mae West, 1927. Actress Mae West found guilty of obscenity and corrupting the morals of youth in 1927 in a New York stage play entitled Sex. She is sentenced to 10 days in prison and fined $500. The resulting publicity launches her Hollywood career. Yeah, how far we have come since 1927, almost 100 years later. Let's see, 1928, the 125th and final facile at the Oxford English Dictionary is published. There's Herbert Hoover, 5-day work week in 1932. Barney Parker, FDR, in 1933 announces U.S. will leave the gold standard. In 1933. Thank you, FDR. What else we got? First day of the Great Uprising in Palestine. Anti-Jewish riots break out in 1936. Oh, what else we got? Anything else stand out-ish? 1941. Milk ration in Holland. A lot of Boston Marathon events on that day. 1944 NFL draft. U.S. aircraft carrier Franklin heavily damaged in Japanese air raid in 1945. What else? Any other 33s, 13s, things of that nature that stand out? 1947, England. 1948. Yankees. General Douglas MacArthur ends his military career in 1951. 58th Boston Marathon in 1954. 1960, Comiskey Park's famed exploding scoreboard begins operating. Old Comiskey Park. 1963, Johnny Cash releases his single Ring of Fire, written by his future wife June Carter and Merle Kilgore. That's interesting. All News Radio, 69th Boston Marathon. I think you pretty well get the idea here. I think we're pretty well caught up to present time. 75th American. There we go. Don't Bother Me. Bangladesh becomes a member of the British Commonwealth in 72. Nuclear tests at Nevada test site, 1972. Barbara Streisand. 75. India launches first satellite with help of USSR. Anything else? William Finn. Rosie Ruiz. Sally Ride. Alright, well, I think that pretty well sums up at least out of that article. Now on to some of the other stuff from the old archives. 23 years later, the Oklahoma City bombing story you were never told about. This was brought up back in 2018, April 19th, out of Antimedia. Sergeant Terrence Yakey was an Oklahoma City police officer, a first responder to the Oklahoma City bombing, and an American hero. Officer Yakey, known to friends as Terry, saved the lives of 8 people from the Alfred P. Mira building on the morning of April 19, 1995. Terry was a few blocks away from Timothy McVeigh and the now infamous Ryder truck, which was brimming with explosives, when it detonated and erased the lives of 168 people, including 19 children. Yakey rushed to the blast site and, without regard for his own life, began pulling people from the rubble one by one. Instead of being showered with accolades by his government for his heroic efforts, Terrence was silenced for what he witnessed in the direct aftermath of one of the largest mass murders that the United States has ever seen. No one is quite sure what Terry actually observed at the Murrah building that April morning, but, according to all indications, whatever it was he witnessed did not sync up with the official narrative released by the U.S. government. Officer Yakey began compiling evidence against the tale put out by the federal officials and stored his findings in a storage facility outside of El Reno, Oklahoma. The data he was accumulating was also in direct contradiction to the facts being reported by media outlets worldwide, according to friends and family. Terry began being intimidated by federal authorities because of his personal pursuit for truth and the information which he possessed. He was being pressured to put an end to his independent investigation. Terry's last known words were, "As soon as I shake these feds that are following me, I'll be back and we'll go to dinner." He never came back. The officer's body was found the next day in a field 1 mile from his abandoned vehicle. He had been bound, repeatedly cut, strangulated, brutally tortured, and killed execution-style with a single bullet that entered his right temple at a 45-degree angle. No gun was found at the scene, and his official cause of death was, ding, 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 Suicide. Sounds awful lot like Arkansas Clinton style, right? Says, I'm not going to suggest that you believe in an elaborate government conspiracy surrounding the Mira building bombing based on this one incident, but with that said, Officer Yakee's story deserves to be told. What did he know? What really happened that morning in Oklahoma City? Why was he silenced? If we truly respected the lives of police officers, maybe it's time we find out the answers to these questions. If not for Terry and his family, then do it for the future of everything you hold dear. Please watch the extremely informative and startling video below about Officer Yakee and learn in more detail about the events that surrounded Terry's death. So, I think I'll let just a little bit of this play through, and in the meantime, I'll drop the link out there if you guys wish to check this out on the upcoming anniversary here.
As the government proclaimed justice for all impacted by the bombing, the people back in Oklahoma still sought the truth and knew now they were on their own. The list of questions continued to grow due to the mysterious death of Oklahoma City police officer Sergeant Terrence Yakee. Terry Yakee, unlike the rest of Oklahoma, may have known too much. Officer Yakee was just over 30 years old at the time of the bombing. The morning of the bombing, he was issuing a traffic ticket near the Civic Center Music Hall, which is about 4 blocks to the west of where the Murray Building stood. He dropped the ticket book, let the woman go, and says, I have to obviously attend to other things. He heard the multiple blasts coming from the Murray Building. Sped up there in his black and white squad car and immediately started pulling out the first of 8 people, Mr. Tom Hall being the first, and former employee of the GSA. Tom, to this day, in fact, I talked to him a couple weeks ago, still has the utmost respect for Officer Yakee. He literally saved his life. Officer Yakee, being an astute police officer for 7 years, veteran of the Oklahoma City Police Department, knew that something was horribly wrong. He tried to get the official storyline out through his commanding officers at the Oklahoma City Police Department, through his family, through his ex-wife, and he chose to withhold some of the storyline because he was in fear for his family and his wife and his 2 young daughters at the time. What we found out, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. that morning, he was brutally murdered 1.5 miles from the front gate of the El Reno Penitentiary. From that moment that his body was found, we know that the crime scene was destroyed. There were spade shovels that were used to turn over the crime scene. Ballistics, any gunpowder residue, anything that had to do with his death was completely destroyed. It was corrupted.
He started having problems with it, not only at work, but his apartment got broke into, his car got broke into, things were stolen out of his house. He had accumulated reports, evidence, I don't know what all, but he was going to take it out to a mini storage in El Reno. And he left one night, and he told a friend of his that they were going to go out to dinner. He says, I got to run out and put some stuff in mini storage, and as soon as I shake these feds that are following me, I'll be back and we'll go to dinner. Well, he never came back. Instead, he was found the next day by a Canadian County Sheriff's deputy. Well, they found his car first, then they found him in a field near the El Reno Penitentiary. The damage to his body was obviously a torture homicide. It was obvious. But what intrigued me the most, that he had several cuts on both of his wrists, inside both elbows, both jugular veins. He'd been beaten. He had ligature marks around his neck. He had handcuff marks on his hands, on his wrists. And he had a small caliber bullet wound that started above on the right-hand side of his temple and exited low on his cheek with no powder burns.
The day of his death, when my daughter called me, I left work, went to El Reno.
Well, we'll go ahead and cut that short there. You guys can check that out over on the link in that provided. It is embedded there. Not sure why the audio is so low on that. I may see if I can do something here real quick. Bear with me. Let's see if this changes anything. Maybe I'm a little low on my side. I don't know. Let's see something here. No, doesn't look to be. Not sure what's going on there. Interesting. All right, well, nonetheless, we'll carry on. And let's see here. Let's go off to the next one. Oh, yeah, this one's still on Waco here. News Wars had this back in 2018 as well. It says 25 years ago, U.S. used chemical weapons against its children. And it says a look into one of the worst moments in American history. David Knight penned this when he was still back with InfoWars at that time. Says CS gas used against babies likely killed them before the fire. When the FBI used CS gas, banned in 100 nations for use even in war against men, women, and children, where was the outrage by the media? Did any nation bomb America for using chemical weapons? And 25 years later, mainstream media still focuses on the heresy of David Koresh if they cover Waco at all. Do we still burn adults and children for heresy? So, yeah, obviously lots of stuff regarding Waco that perhaps we weren't being told because, just like today, we have to have that official narrative, just like everything, right? And, of course, if we flash back here just a few years ago, we also saw the largest Chinese naval drill in 600 years. Live fire exercise begins in the Taiwan Strait. And boy, talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy here. Here we are 3 years later, still talking about the very same players and the shenanigans going on over in that neck of the woods as well. It says last week the People's Liberation Army Navy plan assembled all of its most advanced warships, aircraft, and nuclear submarines for a massive show of force in the South China Sea. We explained how the 3-day war drill from April 10th through the 13th would be held in the waters south of China's Hainan Island. And it says Asia Times estimates some 10,000 People's Liberation Army airmen, Marines, and sailors boarded 48 naval warships and 76 aircraft to show their loyalty and devotion to President Xi Jinping, who was greeted on a destroyer by a resounding chorus of platitudes from soldiers. And there we see that from back then. So the state-run Chinese paper said the number of warships assembled, the largest of its kind in 600 years. This is following the 14th century fleet admiral Zheng He, whose large expeditions in Southeast Asia, South Asia, Western Asia, and East Africa helped establish China's power through expansion of the maritime Silk Road during the Ming Dynasty era, which, by the way, looks similar to President Xi Jinping's 21st century maritime Silk Road. And of course, that's exactly true because what are we seeing play out here today? Well, none other than the expansion of the One Belt, One Road, or the Belt and Road Initiative, or the modern Silk Road, and everything else that China is pushing at this moment. That being said, let's flash over to another one from 2019. CIA Director Gina Haspel praises Trump's wisdom on North Korea. So all these tend to be a little bit war-related, war-footing-related. Let's see here. CIA Director Gina Haspel said Thursday that President Trump had shown a lot of wisdom in his outreach to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, though she sidestepped reports that emerged late Wednesday suggesting Kim observed the testing of a new weapon and wanted a more mature interlocutor than Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. I am very proud that we've been able to support the administration's effort to engage the North Koreans in a dialogue, and that's not to downplay the difficulty of that or the obstacles or challenges associated with it, Haspel said, speaking before a small audience of students, faculty, and press at a scheduled event at Auburn University. But after years of failure, I do think that President Trump has shown a lot of wisdom in reaching out his hand to the North Korean leader and to suggest to them that there might be a different future for the North Korean people. So she added that the CIA was working hard to support the president, the national security team, and Secretary Pompeo as they try and establish a regular and positive dialogue with the North Koreans. But in what appeared to be the first overtly provocative step taken by Kim since the failure of the Hanoi summit in February, North Korean press announced Kim's observation of a new type of tactical guided weapon the evening before Haspel spoke. U.S. officials appear, for the moment, to have ruled out a ballistic missile test and say the testing looks more likely to have been a new kind of artillery or tank round. So lots of war footing and posturing and that occurring on said day. Then over to an old Zero Hedge article, which I had to find on an alternative site from 2019. We'll just poke a little fun at old Joe. I've never seen anything so half-assed. Ex-Biden aide slams 2020 preparations. So, again, flashing back to before all the shenanigans of the 2020 election, the aides and that to Biden and that were calling out how poorly run the whole campaign was. It says despite at least 8 women accusing former Vice President Joe Biden of inappropriately touching them and countless video montages of Biden openly molesting women and children, the 76-year-old appears to be pressing forward with plans to jump into the 2020 Dem presidential primary next week. And this is a favorite picture right there. The look on that guy says it all right there. He's like, get your effing hands off her, dude. Anyway, except according to one unnamed former Biden aide, things are not going according to plan. If there is one. I've never seen anything so half-assed, the former aide said, and told Time they're improvising and doing last-minute planning. The guy has been running for president since 1987 and can't figure the basics out, like where to stand on his first day. This should make everyone very nervous. Another source described as Biden's insider told Time the guy's best day is the day he announces, adding everything after that gets worse. So, nonetheless, I think that it's in and of itself is probably yet another self-fulfilling prophecy, again dating back to 2019. Here we are some 2 years later, and yes, it has been nothing but a dumpster fire. All right, so in 2020, we had this. 1 year later, cause of Notre Dame fire remains a mystery. Granted, this was around that time frame, around April 15th, I think, was the actual date of said fire. But nonetheless, it adds to the calendar, certainly, and I'm sure there's plenty of symbolism involved with that. It says 1 year after a fire nearly destroyed the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, the cause of the blaze remains a mystery. On April 15, 2019, the 850-year-old Gothic building was engulfed in flames, sending its iconic spire crumbling to the ground. And of course, what did we say in the early article? Fire and obviously sacrifice, women, children, you name it. And then, of course, 850, 85, there's 13 right there. Nonetheless, despite police initially asserting that an electrical short circuit was the probable cause of the fire, Europe Echafaudage said that the electricity supply to the 2 lifts on the site was perfectly within specifications and well maintained. 12 months on, and there is no official conclusion as to how the fire started. Le Journal des Arts reports that the coronavirus lockdown and the fact that the remains of the original scaffolding that the fire brought down is still on site has delayed the investigation. Experts still haven't been able to gain access to the area where the blaze is believed to have begun, and that area will not be accessible until the scaffolding comes down, reports ArtNet. It says, as we previously highlighted, following the blaze, the French government ordered state-employed architects not to give interviews to the media about the Notre Dame fire. As the video below documents, in the days after the fire, BuzzFeed ran a fake news hoax denying that Muslims had celebrated the fire, despite evidence of this being manifestly provable. I posted a video from Facebook showing users with Islamic names reacting to the burning cathedral with thumbs up and smiley face emoticons. BuzzFeed then claimed in an article the video in question does not show what people on Facebook were reacting to. Yeah. This was a complete lie. The video clearly shows the Notre Dame Cathedral burning in the background. And of course, what else did we see around that time frame? None other than Michelle riding on a little boat nearby, and of course drinking her little wine and seeing the burning cathedral in the background. Yeah, exactly. We know what's going on with those guys. Sick, twisted, evil. Then we flash back to, I think this was 2017 time frame, if I'm not mistaken. 2019, I should say, rather. No, I guess this was 2020. Sorry about that. Canada's deadliest attack in years. At least 10 killed in roving shooting rampage across Nova Scotia. And of course, as we read back through some of this date in histories, there seem to be a lot of them that stack up in Canada as well. So again, head on a swivel tomorrow, days coming. In what will be remembered as one of the worst mass shootings in recent Canadian history, though the country is certainly no stranger to terrorist attacks. More than 10 people are dead, including an RCMP officer and the suspect, after an attack that continued over the course of several hours as police pursued the suspect across the province. More than 10 people are dead, including an RCMP officer and the suspect, in that shooting incident in Nova Scotia. The RCMP provided an update during a news conference in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, Sunday evening, releasing precious few details about a rampage it carried on across the province, with people apparently killed by the shooter in multiple locations. Today is a devastating day for Nova Scotia, and it will remain etched in the minds of many for years to come. And Commanding RCMP Officer Lee Bergman. The shooter was identified as a 51-year-old Gabriel Wortman. His motives remain unclear. Wortman was killed by police outside the Irving gas station and Big Stop restaurant in Enfield, Nova Scotia, roughly 25 miles from downtown Halifax. So, again, seems to be plenty of opportunities, or for whatever reason, whatever the symbolism is, whatever it is that they do, behind the scenes to target Canada as well. That being said, Russian bombers fly near Alaskan coast for a second day in a row. A lot of war posturing back on April 19th, 2017. This out of Infowars/Prison Planet. Says Russian bombers flew off the Alaskan coast for a second time this week, coming within 35 miles of the U.S. mainland. The two Tu-95 nuclear-capable bombers, which entered the U.S. military Air Defense Identification Zone, were detected by U.S. radar flying northeast of the Aleutian Islands. Although remaining in international airspace, the Russian aircraft would have been asked to identify themselves once 200 nautical miles from the coastline. The U.S. Air Force sent an E-3 Sentry early warning plane from Elmendorf Air Force Base in Anchorage to intercept the bombers and to confirm no other aircraft were present. Reports indicate that the U.S. aircraft flew alongside the Tu-95s for several hours before they turned back toward Russia. In a similar incident just one evening prior, on Monday, a pair of Russian bombers came within 100 miles of Alaska's Kodiak Island. The F-22 stealth fighter jets and an E-3 Sentry early warning plane were scrambled by the U.S. Air Force to intercept the Russian aircraft. It says after spending 12 minutes alongside the bombers, the Tu-95s flew back to Anadyr in eastern Russia. The two Russian flights are said to have come closer to the U.S. mainland than any others in the last 2 years. And of course, U.S.-Russia relations were recently described as being at a political all-time low by President Donald Trump. So, again, a lot of war posturing as well going on in those days. Are we seeing much the same? Well, perhaps. And of course, little tech news as well. Can't be outdone without having this in there as well. An article out of Inverse says at F8, Facebook debuts a new platform, the human brain. So, not only do they like to do their little sacrificial stuff on said dates, but the nefarious deeds are exposed and released for the public to see, as well, as if this is some sort of trophy, I suppose. It says Facebook's most advanced platform isn't its newly business-focused messenger or even its solar-powered internet drone. It's the human brain itself. The social media giant announced Wednesday at its F8 developer conference in San Francisco that its secretive Building 8 research lab is developing technology for brain-powered smartphones. Regina Dugan, the head of Building 8, who came to Facebook with DARPA, hello DARPA, said that eventually it could let people interact with machines in unprecedented ways, letting them type by thinking and communicate through vibrations on their skin. The technology is still in its infancy, but the demonstrations during Dugan's speech at F8 made it clear that Facebook's in-house research is still much further along than you'd probably think. Your brain is capable of producing about 1 terabyte per second. About 40 HD movies are streaming in your brain every second. Dugan said from the stage. Herein lies the problem. How do I get all that information out of my brain and into the world? What are my choices? Her presentation laid out Facebook's plan for doing just that. Now, mind you, this article was from... Oh, where'd it go? I think I passed it. Is this from 2017? I can't remember. I have to go back and look here real quick. That was, 2017. That's when that rolled out. So, if you flash forward to today, do you think that technology is already in some of the latest smartphones? Or perhaps in conjunction with 5G rollout, that it's possible that, perhaps Facebook being embedded in just about everything with their like buttons and various other apps, and that probably recording data on your phone that somehow, some way, you might be manipulated if you're just carrying your phone around. Think back to what happened in D.C. with one of the guys in that who tried to breach the fence and ended up shooting his phone. Seems a little odd, right? Says the neural work revealed at F8 fell into two basic categories: getting information out of the brain and getting other information back in. First, Facebook wants to find a way to get information from a user's brain onto a computer or smartphone, hands-free. Its goal is to get good enough at interpreting information from the brain to be able to pull 100 words per minute, or about 4 times faster than the average person types on a smartphone with their thumbs. Dugan, who also led Google Advanced Technologies and Projects Division, said in her keynote that getting access to that brain information in consumers is a long way out. Yeah, right. DARPA? Cripes. If they're involved, then chances are it's been developed for 75 plus years. Please. Facebook's testing, which included having real patients moving mouse pointers with their minds or deciphering language out of brain activity, all requires intracranial electrodes, aka brain surgery. And I guess I'll pause there and remember that an article, I think just within the last week or so, came out about monkeys actually moving stuff on the screen and getting rewarded with treats or something purely by doing it with their minds, hands-free. So again, this 2017 article, here it is 2021. How long do you think this technology has actually been available? Nonetheless, it says, in that, Dugan said with dramatic understatement, will not scale. These newly revealed neural control technologies are very much a part of the 10-year vision Facebook was pushing for the entire F8 conference. Dugan mentioned that the company's hopes for a sufficiently high-resolution, non-invasive neural electrode currently rest on optical imaging, which she then explained. Says, make no mistake, however, neither Facebook nor anyone else has such an optical electrode currently working to nearly the level they will require. So there you have it, a little bit of a look at what Facebook was doing back then, and not to be outdone, we can't not go too far without having... what is this? Hang on, let me see if I can get that out of here. That's not supposed to be there. Let's try this one more time. Bill Gates backs $1 billion plan to cover Earth and video surveillance satellites. So yeah, Bill Gates was plotting even back then. Let's see, will I be able to actually read this thing, or is this thing going to get in the way? Yeah, crap. Didn't think I had that open up on the other side. But anyway, you get the idea. Bill Gates was at it even back then, still at it today, just different tools, different ways to try and connive and steal, and basically try and pull in their Georgia Guidestone's plans of getting down to 500 million, because, as we well know, him, just like his father, are the wonderful eugenicists that they are. Alright, that being said, let's flash over to Breitbart. What happened today in 1775? The shot heard round the world. Let's see if I can pipe this up so you guys can hear it decent, and we'll let this play through.
Today, the left wants to rewrite history. They would have us believe that the United States of America was created by a bunch of rich white racists. But the truth is, 244 years ago, a bunch of regular, hard-working, armed Americans like you and me united together to take a stand, to fight for freedom. And they kicked the crap out of the #1 superpower on the planet. The world's never been the same since. See, back then, gun control didn't mean a local government was going to go door to door confiscating weapons. It meant that they needed to know that every able-bodied man of fighting age had weapons and knew how to use them. If you were male 16 years or older, the law required that you own a musket or a rifle, have powder, 20 rounds of lead, serve and train with the local militia. Back in Rhode Island, if you went into town unarmed, they could fine you 5 shillings. The very best of these men, the most elite, they were selected to be Minutemen. Patriots that could mobilize to fight the enemy at a minute's notice. And these armed citizens, they were a direct threat to British control. Americans would never give up their guns. So the Brits decided they were going to try to take them. So on April 19, 1775, British troops marched out of Boston, confiscate weapons and ammo that they believed were hidden on the farm of Colonel James Barrett in Concord. On the way through Lexington, they ran into Captain John Parker and his small band of Minutemen. And though greatly outnumbered, Captain Parker told his men, "Stand your ground. Do not fire unless fired upon, but if they mean war, let it begin here." And the Brits did fire first, and 8 Americans died. Then the Redcoats marched on to Colonel Barrett's farm, but they didn't find guns and ammo. What they did find was Colonel Barrett and 400 Minutemen and militia gathered at North Bridge. And once again, the Brits fired the first volley. But this time, when the Americans fired back, the British turned and retreated. They fled the battlefield. But more Minutemen, more militia, they rallied to the fight, and the Brits took another 300 casualties on their retreat back to Boston. This is the shot that was heard around the world. This was the beginning of America's fight for freedom. This is our culture. This is our history. Let's remember who we are. Let's remember where we came from. Let's remember exactly why we are Americans.
So there you go, folks. Some of the things that took place on this date, April 19th, tomorrow, in history. That's not to say that things couldn't potentially happen on the 20th, but basically between the 19th and about May 1st, keep your head on a swivel. And furthermore, if you remember back here just about a little over a week or so ago, don't you find it interesting that old Joe Biden was proclaiming that, hey, you know, on May 1st is when we're going to have vaccines available to all. And then suddenly, just out of the blue, that date got backed up to April 19th. The question is, why? What would be the purpose of backing up the date for vaccines to be made available to all? Is that still going to happen, especially in light of what just happened with the Johnson & Johnson vaxes? I don't know. It's hard to say. But definitely enough to prick the old ears up and do a little bit of a dig and see just what sort of important events took place on the said date over the last years, let's say. So, what say you guys? You think that I missed any? You think I hit some of the major ones here? Am I missing any other major ones that you can think of? If you can think of any, go ahead and put them down in the comments. Put them in the chat here. It's just some of the ones net that I came across here, going back through my particular archives net that I have. But definitely keep the old head on a swivel. So that being said, that is all I've got here for this evening. Just wanted to give a little bit of a heads up as to what potentially could come. Not saying that it will, but obviously looking at the playing field here, again, looking at the various shootings and the agenda that is at play here. Obviously, plenty of shootings and that going on from Colorado to Indianapolis to Austin, Texas here today. And I think there was another one, if I'm not mistaken. I thought there were 2 here today. I can't remember off the top of my head the other one, if that was down Atlanta or where the heck that was. But nonetheless, obviously they have an agenda. They want to take the guns. And just like the video that we just concluded with, remember, all it takes is the shot heard around the world. If they think that they're going to go so far as try and take firearms from good old Americans, I sure hope that they've done their planning and done it well. we have plenty of room on the calendar for yet another Independence Day. So that's where I'll leave it here for the evening. So that being said, appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, stay tuned. We may have more here on this channel. If not, otherwise, you can catch me over on my channel. We'll do some more of the reading behind the scenes of The Virtue of Selfishness, which I've been covering on my channel, the old Ayn Rand book here. I think we'll probably have maybe one more session of that and be done with that before we get on to the next. And we'll go from there. All right, that's going to do it. Take care. God bless everybody.